Welcome to the Atheist Nun channel, a show aimed to inspire readers to cherish the most meaningful moments found in life by learning about secular morality. Subscribe for more content on aspects of my business and writing life, as well as topics concerning ethics, mid-19th century living, etiquette, and much more. I would like to open this piece with two different excerpts. Here is the first one. The bond between husband and wife is a strong one. Suppose the man had hunted her out and brought her back. The memory of her acts would still be there, and inevitably sooner or later, it would be cause for rancor. When there are crises, incidents, a woman should try to overlook them, for better or for worse, and make the bond into something durable. The wounds will remain, with the woman and with the man, when there are crises such as I have described. It is very foolish for a woman to let a little dalliance upset her so much that she shows her resentment openly. He has his adventures, but if he has fond memories of their early days together, his and hers, she may be sure that she matters. And here is the second one. You are part of my existence, part of myself. You have been in every line I have ever read since I first came here. The rough common boy whose poor heart you wounded even then. You have been in every prospect I have ever seen since. On the river, on the sails of the ships, on the marshes, in the clouds, in the light, in the darkness, in the wind, in the woods, in the sea, in the streets. You have been the embodiment of every graceful fancy my mind has ever become acquainted with. The stones of which the strongest London buildings are made are not more real or more impossible to displace with your hands than your presence and influence have been to me, there and everywhere, and will be. The first excerpt is from the Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, which is widely considered to be the first novel in the world. The author lived from around 973 to 1014 or 1025 CE, and the book was written between 1000 and 1012 CE. Now, the second excerpt is from Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, who is a more modern author of novels. The author lived from 1813 to 1870 CE, and the book was written in 1861 CE. One was written by a Japanese woman living in the Heian period, or the High Middle Ages in European history. The other was written by an English man living in the Victorian era. Besides languages changing and translations done, are either of these texts unintelligible? Is there any sense of loss in meaning or emotion across time? Does understanding cease with one being from another race or gender than our own? No, no, and no again. People today are falling into the tribalist trap. Just because you are, let's say, a young Hispanic woman who has not seen a flash drive or a cassette tape outside of museums does not mean that you cannot read a book from any time period and empathize with that writer. That is truly the magic of literature. Modern people can still have a dialogue of sorts with other people who have long since gone back into the earth. Regardless of skin color or gender, it doesn't matter. What literature does is bring honest thoughts to the fore. Still unconvinced? Let's take another example. But first, let me warn you that these images may be a bit too graphic for some viewers, as they are of real human cadaver arms. I recently came across the Institute of Human Anatomy's YouTube channel, and in a couple of their videos, they go into the complex anatomy of the human hand. Can you tell what race either arm is? Neither could I. The screenshot on the left is of a black man, and the one on the right is of a white woman. Race is not a scientific concept, but simply a social one. Even Shakespeare points this out in The Merchant of Venice, when Shylock says, "If you prick us, do we not bleed?" We all migrated out of Africa and have not had that much time to evolve, so there is only a superficial difference between us based on environmental factors. That is only 0.1% of our DNA. Underneath our skin, we look the same. An apt Ayn Rand quote from The Virtue of Selfishness deserves its place here. Racism is the lowest, most crudely primitive form of collectivism. It is the notion of ascribing moral, social, or political significance to a man's genetic lineage. The notion that a man's intellectual and characterological traits are produced and transmitted by his internal body chemistry, which means, in practice, that a man is to be judged not by his own character and actions, but by the characters and actions of a collective of ancestors. She also famously says in her book Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, that the smallest minority on earth is the individual. The same thinking goes for sexism. Like many other people I've heard speak on this subject, I was one of those tomboy girls. I wore jeans and a t-shirt for my entire academic career. I found that these clothes were the most comfortable to live in because that way my outfits didn't distract away from my studies. Did I think I was attracted to girls because of the way I dressed? No. Did I feel like I was in the wrong body because of it? No. I really did not feel feminine until I started having sex. Being with the opposite sex made me feel more submissive, and I fit into the other half of the puzzle piece well. The bond between a man and a woman does feel very natural. However, all that time beforehand was purely a time for the mind to grow without restraint. In today's day and age, education was not held or manipulated to be on a different level or about different subjects from the boys. I learned about anything and everything I could, and I still am today. All of that to say, sex does not, nor should it, play a role in the education of a child. The human mind is our tool of survival, and there is no race or gender divide that can stop us from using it and communicating our thoughts clearly with one another. There is no separate reality or my truth. There is no black perspective or white perspective. There is no age too old or young to understand one another once language is attained and maintained. There is no beauty standard that makes us unable to speak to each other. There is no reason a man cannot explain something to a woman and vice versa. The only difference to be found concerns varying cultures. While Ayn Rand talks about culture as not the anonymous product of undifferentiated masses, but the sum of the intellectual achievements of individual men, I do think that there can be bad cultures that uphold negative things as values. The battles of ideas and values play out in various cultures, but most of them sink and only a few of them swim over the long term. For example, history proves to us that killing off a group based on superficial reasons causes war and loss and suffering. The culture quickly forgoes that as a value once they lose the war. A culture centered around gang violence and stealing from stores only tears down its followers and destroys itself from the inside out. But a culture where individual happiness is the focus provides people with diets and exercise plans and enlightenment ideas. There are numerous examples I could run through concerning what makes up a good culture versus a bad one, but I do not have time for that here. Come up with your own. What divides us, at least in first world countries today, is not race or gender, but a culture war where tribalism is rearing its ugly head. I am here to remind you that race and gender do not matter. Period. Stop listening to the news that is telling you otherwise. Stop teaching students that there is a veil between us that separates our realities and our truths from being acknowledged by the other. Stop saying that this group can't be held accountable because of the color of their skin. Stop whispering the things that should be said aloud. Stop playing the victim and remember that there is only one race, the human race. Thanks for joining me this month on the Atheist Nun channel. If you found value in the show, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on AmericanWordsmith.com, where you can buy my novels, The Paper Pusher, The Dormant Age, A Man of Silence, and A Man of Action. Be sure to tune in next month for a new episode. Take care.